India is preparing for a major shift at the very heart of its political power. In the coming years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to begin working from a newly constructed office complex located next to Rashtrapati Bhavan, the official residence of the Indian president. This move is part of the government's ambitious Central Vista redevelopment project, one of the largest urban and administrative transformations undertaken in independent India. In this video, you will see what this project includes, how much it is expected to cost, why key financial details remain undisclosed, and how this large-scale spending contrasts sharply with the economic pressures faced by much of India's population. According to available government and media reports, the new Prime Minister's office will be housed in a complex that is expected to be named Seva Tirth. The site lies in New Delhi's most sensitive administrative zone and will also include a new official residence for the Prime Minister located close to the office building. Both structures fall under the Central Vista project, which aims to overhaul colonial-era government infrastructure and centralize executive, legislative, and administrative functions in one area. Officials indicate that construction work is progressing rapidly, with the targeted completion date set for 2026, while the government has publicly stated that the overall Central Vista redevelopment is expected to cost approximately 200 billion Indian rupees, roughly $2.23 billion US dollars. It has consistently declined to provide detailed, itemized expenditure figures under India's Right to Information Act of 2005. Earlier this year, the government did acknowledge before Parliament that costs associated with parts of the project had increased. The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs cited rising goods and services tax rates, higher steel prices, and expanded security requirements as reasons for increased spending on the new Parliament building and the Vice President's residence. However, information about the Prime Minister's new residence and office remained limited, with no clear breakdown of costs or timelines made public. To clarify these details, the BBC filed a formal request under the Right to Information Act seeking comprehensive data. The request asked for the total estimated cost of the Central Vista project as of September 30th, 2025, a list of approved tenders, names of contractors, descriptions of completed and ongoing works, and projected completion dates. It also requested specific information about the Prime Minister's residence, its facilities, and similar details about the Vice President's enclave, while emphasizing that national security considerations should not be compromised. The response from government agencies was largely restrictive. The Central Public Works Department, which oversees Central Vista construction, informed information officers to gather relevant data, but later stated that details concerning project costs, completion timelines, and tender allocations did not fall under its jurisdiction. Regarding the Prime Minister's residence, officials classified the project under a confidential category, arguing that disclosure could affect India's sovereignty, territorial integrity, national security, and strategic interests. When the BBC appealed the decision, the response reiterated that the request was considered too vague and that releasing information about the Prime Minister's residence could potentially impact national security and international relations. No substantive information was provided regarding the Vice President's enclave, despite earlier claims that it had already been completed. What is publicly known comes mainly from the official Central Vista project website. It states that the Prime Minister's current residence at Lok Kalyan Marg lies outside the Central Vista zone. As part of the redevelopment, existing residential clusters behind the South Block were cleared to make space for a new, fully equipped Prime Ministerial residence. Additional facilities for the Special Protection Group, which provides close security to the Prime Minister, are planned on a nearby plot. The government argues that bringing offices and residences of top officials into one integrated zone will reduce redundant infrastructure, improve coordination, and ease traffic congestion in the capital. The new Prime Minister's office complex is expected to sit alongside key institutions such as the Cabinet Secretariat, the National Security Council Secretariat, and conference facilities like Hyderabad House. Together, these will form what the government describes as an executive enclave. Beyond the Prime Minister's office and residence, the Central Vista project includes a new Parliament building, opened in May 2023, 10 new common Central Secretariat buildings, redesigned parliamentary chambers for members of Parliament, and the redevelopment of Central Vista Avenue. The government has framed the project as a long-term investment intended to serve future generations. However, this narrative exists alongside a very different economic reality for much of India's population. According to World Bank estimates, nearly 130 million Indians still live in multidimensional poverty, facing limited access to healthcare, sanitation, and education. While official government data suggests poverty levels have declined, independent economists point out that job insecurity, rising food prices, and stagnant wages continue to strain households. Inflation has remained a persistent challenge. Consumer price inflation in India has frequently hovered above the Reserve Bank of India's comfort zone, driven largely by food and fuel costs. At the same time, the Indian rupee has faced steady depreciation pressure against the US dollar, increasing the cost of imports and reducing household purchasing power. For millions of Indians, daily expenses now take up a larger share of income than they did a decade ago. Public spending priorities have therefore become a subject of debate. Critics argue that allocating billions of dollars to administrative infrastructure during a period of economic strain sends the wrong signal. They point to underfunded public hospitals, overcrowded schools, unemployment among young people, and rural distress as areas that could benefit from similar levels of investment. Supporters of the project counter that capital infrastructure spending generates jobs, improves efficiency, and reduces long-term operating costs. They argue that outdated colonial-era buildings were never designed for a modern democracy of India's scale, and that centralized governance can improve decision-making and national coordination. Still, transparency remains a key concern. India's Right to Information Act was designed to allow citizens insight into public spending, especially for large taxpayer-funded projects. The government's repeated refusal to disclose detailed cost data has raised questions among transparency advocates and fiscal watchdogs, particularly when security concerns are cited broadly rather than narrowly. The Central Vista redevelopment is unfolding at a time when India is positioning itself as a global economic and diplomatic power. Yet the contrast between monumental state architecture and everyday economic hardship remains stark. While the government frames the project as a symbol of national ambition and administrative modernization, critics view it as emblematic of widening inequality and skewed priorities. As construction continues toward the 2026 deadline, questions about accountability, cost overruns, and long-term benefits remain unanswered. What is clear is that the Central Vista project is not just about buildings. It reflects deeper choices about governance, transparency, and how a rapidly changing India defines progress in an era of economic uncertainty.